Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Cooked, where I speak to members of our rowing community and get some insights into what's happening around in not only Australian rowing but world rowing. And tonight I have a very special guest. It is Olympic champion, IOC member and FISA president Jean-Christophe Rolland. Bonjour and welcome.
Hello Sarah, bonjour à tous, and thank you for having me today.
It's my pleasure. And look, I'd like to start back where it all began for you. How did you find the sport of rowing? How did you get started?
Well, I could make this story very long, but let it make it short. Actually, my parents always have encouraged their children to practice, I would say, out of school, out of the academic education. We played music, and as far as I'm concerned, I was very much more attracted by sport. So I started with swimming, rugby, and then I simply followed my brother, who has started at the time started rowing because he had a friend who was a rower. So it was like as simple as that. So I followed him, and basically since I've started, I just little by little get passionate.
And was it ever a dream for you to represent your country or to go to the Olympic Games?
To be honest, I would say no. Actually, I really climbed this step by step without making. Obviously, as all children, I loved sport, and I had I was passionate, and when I looked at champions, it was like a dream. But it was a dream, not and without having this as an objective. And because I started and little by little raising the steps, I always put the objectives, the bar, higher and higher, up to the maximum of which are the Olympic Games. So it was not a plan from the very beginning, but it was built year after years.
And so you built and you built and you built, and I'd like to fast forward and not to take anything away from those many years where I'm sure you were training and racing, but let's fast forward to the Sydney Olympic Games. It's 20 years this year since the Sydney Olympics, obviously very special for us, a very special anniversary. Can you tell us about some of your memories of Sydney Olympics and of the Regatta Centre in Penrith?
Yeah, actually, Sydney was fantastic games. Just if I had one word to say, I would say fantastic. Fantastic for many reasons. Obviously, as far as I'm concerned, because it was my last and my most successful Olympic Games. It was my third Olympic Games after Barcelona and then Atlanta. So I had that kind of experience, and obviously when we arrived in Sydney, the objective was not only to participate or to compete; it was to reach the best we can achieve. And so when you have that kind of success, obviously it remains in your for the life. So that's fantastic. And also I would say the atmosphere in Sydney. The games in Penrith. I mean, for rowing, for the sport of rowing, we had a fantastic course, and I mean, yeah, as an athlete, I mean, it was really great games, great organization, fantastic atmosphere. We've been lucky a little bit about the weather. We had fantastic condition. If you remember, the canoe, the following week had some troubles, but for us it was fantastic.
And you had one of the most exciting races of the Olympics, I think, a very close race in the men's pair final. What do you remember of that day and of that race?
Well, I probably remind every second of this day. I don't want to exaggerate, but it obviously, as you can imagine, to achieve that kind of performance is something that you cannot forget. And from the very beginning, when we wake up at 4 a.m, the breakfast, in the athletes tent at 5 a.m. with very little number of athletes, only rowers. at that time of the day in the restaurant, in the athletes restaurant, and then the bus to the course, the warming up, and all these things. I have every second in my head, and and then we can talk about the strategy, because obviously when you reach that point on a competition, you have to have a strategy for racing, and that has actually made a lot of questions when I am asked about this race, because this race has made a lot of comments, how we played it, or how we and was it part of the strategy, or was it planned? We had a lot of question, and I don't know how far you want me to answer your question, but I could tell you every stroke or every piece of this 2,000 meters and how we built it. But just to say that, yeah, at the end, I would not say that it's a race that you can replicate every weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely incredible. And for anyone who hasn't watched the race, go online and watch it. I was coaching an Australian men's crew for the Junior World Championships a few years ago, and I asked the athletes to pick out their favourite race of all time, and for one of them, that was their favourite race of all time. So we got to watch that.
I think the key point here is actually all the crews are well prepared. They are at the top of their technique, at the top of their performance, but you know that you are part of this community of elite athletes. And then what will make the difference at the time you have to race is certainly about the mental strength and how hard you can push up to limit and even beyond the limit. And actually I think that we went almost beyond our limit on that day, but you can do it only once, and just because it's an Olympic final. And basically I think that what makes a difference, it was about the strategy, but about this mental strength we had to push that hard. And actually, just to give you a little bit of the content of this race, usually the third 500 meters was our weakness. It was the slowest time split from the 1,000 mark to the 1,500, and actually, if you look at the details of this race, it's been the fastest 500 meters, which is totally unusual and crazy, basically. And how you can make from your weakness to make a strength. But I must say that the last 25 strokes were just like we were in another world, totally exhausted. Anyway, we could spend 2 hours on this.
We could.
Sorry to be long.
No, it's an extraordinary race, and like I said, get online and watch it if you haven't seen it before. Well, thank you for talking us through that. And now to fast forward, I guess, to our next Olympic Games. Of course, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics have been postponed by 12 months. How is planning progressing in terms of rowing for the Olympics, being now 12 months later than originally planned?
So first of all, allow me to say that I feel very, with all the athletes who have been in this period of time training, but with a lot of uncertainties. And I can tell you that since this crisis has started in February, March, we have been following, obviously, and on a daily basis in a crisis mode. And I feel very much with all the athletes having to this kind of pressure in addition to what they have to do every single day to train, and as the leaders of the organization that we have to really to take that kind of difficult decisions. It's been a really I would say a very, very tough period of time. Obviously this evolved every single day, so we had to really understand the situation and to ensure that we were taking the right decision at the right time. Obviously, with the IOC, WHO, and until the decision was made, we really hoped that we could go on with the games this year. But it became obvious based on the situation that it was not possible. So then. I can tell you that not only for the IF, for FISA, but for the IOC and for the organizing committee, this is an immense challenge. An immense challenge. It's not like you just have to postpone, you copy and paste. I mean, can you believe all the contracts, all the preparation, and the Olympic Village, everything. I mean, they have an immense task to reconsider all this preparation, and really, obviously we have to contribute, and we can contribute up to in our I'd say territory, but this is really a difficult time. So preparation is going as well as possible, as you can imagine. There is a big issue about the additional cost, and the IOC and Tokyo are trying now to find the way to simplify, to find a way to reduce a cost. So we will have to adapt to this situation. The key thing is the athlete will not be touched by this consideration. We always put the athlete, and I want to be very clear on that, at the center of the games. So it will be more about reducing, I would say, the services, not for the athletes, but for everyone else, basically. And we'll see. We really hope, because at the time we are speaking now, I mean, who knows? Who knows? I mean, it's so uncertain, and I really cross my fingers, and I want to be optimistic, but it's still uncertain if we can have the games. But I can tell you that everything possible is made to ensure that we can have successful Olympic Games next year in Tokyo.
Well, we're all crossing our fingers and definitely hoping for that. And I can only imagine what a huge task it is for the IOC and the international federations. But as you say, for all of the athletes and those programs who are waiting to see what happens and trying to train and prepare as though that's going ahead. So uncertain times, but fingers crossed that we can have a fantastic celebration next year at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. And to be a little bit cheeky here, but which nations do you think will be the top performing at the Olympics for rowing? Are you allowed to say?
Well, as you can imagine, I'm neutral, and I want everyone to perform at their best. And I have all the rowers on Earth. We like that when performance is based on your strengths, on your capacity and your skills. And I wish all the best to all the athletes, not to win, because obviously you just have a very few that will win, but to do their best. And as long as you have reached your best, I think you can deserve and you can be proud of that. So to answer your question, I mean, we know from the World Championship last year how the landscape, what are the strong nations. I must say that there is a kind of, apart from one or two are at the top for many years in our sport, and Australia was one of the two. I think that there is quite a good spread in terms of medals, and that's good for our sport as well. So we have a good crews in many countries, and that makes the also part of the interest of our sport, to make not to have to have a good spread of medals.
Yes, well, I think we would like Australia to win everything. But as you say, I think particularly in recent World Championships and recent Olympics, there has been an incredible spread of countries winning medals. So I think it really is extraordinary how far it's come.
You have to share. You cannot take it.
We're not good at sharing. Especially not with New Zealand. So you're currently preparing for the FISA Congress, and that's an opportunity once every 4 years to make changes to the statutes and the rules for the sport. So what are some of the major changes that you're looking to address at the Congress this year?
Yeah, actually, probably it's not the rule book is not something that every rower know about and will have on near the bed to or maybe to how do you say in English, I don't know, when you want to sleep at night and you you cannot sleep, you can read the FISA's rule book and then in 2 minutes you will fall asleep, I can tell you. More seriously, as you know, I mean, as an organization, we do have statutes, and as a sport, we do have rules of racing, rules of competition. This is the way to ensure that everyone knows exactly how the sport is governed and the rules of the sport. And we have this opportunity, as you say, once every 4 years to adapt, to evolve, and to change the rules. So this is for different reasons, but the main reason is we are always in a continuous improvement mode. And when we have some, let's say, rule 36 about the events, as you know, we have changed year after year, or every 4 years we can have a review on what are the events we have in the World Championship program, in the Olympic program as well. We have, if I come back to the statutes, we have improvement in the mode, in the governance mode. We introduced last time the limitation of the number of mandates you can have when you are elected in the council or in the executive committee. It's to adapt to the current environment and to always try to make our statutes better, to improve. And when it comes to the rules, as I say, we have some evolution. If you remember, in the past we had this 100 meters rule that was then taken out. And for the future, as you are questioning me about the next one, again, when it comes to statutes, we will have some improvement in the governance, and I will not detail. You can have all these elements that have been published on the website. I don't want to bother you about this aspect, but it's always this idea to have the best way to govern the organization, and especially in this period of time when we had unfortunately many or too many scandals in the way a sport organization have been run in the past, and the credibility of the sport movement and the credibility of the sports organization has been severely damaged because of these scandals. So we have to ensure with the strong structure, the strong organization, that we can make it sure that we are perceived as good governance bodies. And for the rules, what kind of changes? We have minor changes in terms of commitment for the athletes or for the participants. We will have some evolution on the rules for coastal rowing. Coastal rowing is a quite, I would say, new discipline that is not mature, fully mature. So we improve every 4 years. We try to improve the regulations. What I have in mind, indoor rowing also, we have different. I mean, we try to improve the rules. So it's been actually a very huge exercise that has started actually since the end of the previous External Congress in 2017, and we have this exercise that will be achieved. I mean, the outcome will be the next External Congress in October 2020. So we try to share with our member federation. I appreciate that the athletes are possibly not very much attracted or involved in this, in the sense that they don't. But we have in these discussions, we always have our athletes commission and the chair of the athletes commission participating in all these discussions, these debates, so that we have obviously the voice of the athletes represented in all these changes.
Absolutely. Yes, in Australia we have, of course, Hannah Every-Hall, the chair of our Athletes Commission, who sits on the FISA Athletes Commission as well. So very involved in that. And we always like hearing about the initiatives from the Athletes Commission, of course, as well. And in terms of the Olympic program moving forward, there's a proposal to remove lightweight events from the Olympic Games. What are, I guess, FISA's future plans for this category?
Yeah, maybe if you allow me, I would just try to explain the reasons behind or the rationale behind this proposal.
Of course.
And it's part of what I call the Olympic strategy. The Olympic strategy was built because we believe that being part of the Olympic movement is essential for the sport of rowing. Being part of the Olympic program is just crucial for the sport of rowing. Can you believe being or not in the Olympic Games makes a huge difference, and for us, for FISA, but also for our member federation, and more globally for the sport. So and that lead our discussion around what are the decisions to make on this very specific matter. And obviously, when you talk about the Olympic Games, you're not talking about, I mean, the Olympic Games does not belong to FISA. It's not, it's an organization. There are many sports, 28 sports for the Summer Olympic Games. And also this event is very successful, is fantastic. They have also very much big challenges and to find organizers. And if you look at the recent past and the referendum for the population to have the games at home were not very successful because people are afraid about the size, about the complexity, and also about the cost of the games. So the IOC has made an exercise, an in-depth exercise called Agenda 2020 to reduce this complexity, the cost, and everything. And as part of the Olympic movement, we rowing, we have to contribute, to be part of it. And for sure, there is a large pressure for a lot of sport to get in, and for the sport who are in to keep in the Olympic movement and in the program. So to make a summary, it's not like, oh, we decide, we have, and as you know, we are at the top of the ranking in terms of number of athletes. So just to give you a little bit about the environment and the pressure we are facing. We were 550 in London as the number of athletes, 520 in Rio, sorry, and we will be 526 athletes in Tokyo, which means we were third on the 28th ranking in terms of number of athletes. And just to give you this illustration, I mean, when we sit around the table and with this kind of pressure around complexity and reducing the total number of athletes, I remind you that there are 10,500 athletes at the Olympic Games. It has increased a little bit, and it was about 11,300 in Rio, and they really want to reduce. And so we are under this pressure, and you can imagine that the other sports are looking at rowing. Why rowing? Can you justify, based on this large view, can you justify that we have 526 rowers at the Olympic Games? So what we have to understand as a rower, that this pressure is quite legitimate. So to come to your question, then it's also an evaluation of our events. We have 14 events, and obviously with the number of events, the number of athletes, based on this situation, we are under pressure. And it was clear from a long time ago that the IOC was not under the pressure of all the sports, was not really comfortable with rowing having a weight category. And that's why we've been under pressure from the IOC to remove the lightweight. We achieved to save the double for Tokyo. I can remember you that at the time, we were forced. I mean, it was a good step forward to impose the gender equality at the Olympic Games. So to move to the gender equality at the Olympic Games would mean for us we had only the men's coxless 4, lightweight coxless 4, and not the women. So it was either to present a 4 lightweight event or reduce the lightweight at the Tokyo Olympic Games. And we achieved to save actually two events, the men's and women lightweight double. But it was clear from the beginning from the IOC that it could not be for the future. Again, I would like to make it clear that lightweight have been fantastic for the sport of rowing, and no one will dispute that. It has been excellent for the development of the sport. It has been, and it's still the case. The lightweight are really in many continents. I mean, the number of participants, the level of the competition, this is absolutely fine. But when it comes to this discussion with the IOC, which is a very specific context, indeed we were very much under pressure to remove the weight category in the sport. So to answer this question, we launched actually a project. It took 2 years for the project, and the question was, how can we address this challenge from the IOC? How can we present the IOC with a strong rational, a strong argument to have lightweight in the Olympic Games? I must say that we had a fantastic people in that group, experts from inside rowing, outside of rowing, lightweight people. We have a good group of experts in this project, and the eventually outcome of this research, this exercise, this project was we haven't found the key argument that will keep the lightweight in the Olympic Games. So that's where we are. To move from that very defensive mode to try to save the lightweight, when we had this result of this project, we decided to move from this, I would say, defensive mode to a more proactive ambition. And that's why, not to lose the number of athletes, not to lose the number of events, the proposal was is still a proposal to have coastal rowing, and for us it's a way also to try to develop the community of rowers worldwide, to reach new audiences, and we believe that it's a way to move again to continue to develop and to adapt to the current context. So it's quite a difficult matter, because I know that it was very frustrating for many of our athletes and all the lightweight community, and I can tell you that we fought we put all our efforts to find the way, but we have to admit and we have to understand that the context is that one, and if we don't adapt, we will die. We have to adapt to ensure that the right future for our sport in the Olympic Games. Sorry, I've been a little bit long, but I think it's important to understand all the rationale behind this the situation and the decision.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate all of that context. I think our viewers would be really interested to not know how these decisions come about and the amount of work that's gone into it and the period of time over which you've been considering these really, huge, I guess, matters for our sport. But, in picking up on what you're saying about coastal and beach sprints, I was fortunate enough to commentate at the beach sprints in Shenzhen last year and at the coastal championships in Hong Kong, which were just absolutely unbelievable. And we've had the great news that the beach sprints or coastal, I'm not sure, do we know yet which format for the 2022 Youth Olympic Games?
So for the 2022 Youth Olympic Games, it will be the beach sprint format.
Great.
But just to add to your point, effectively in coastal rowing we have two different formats: the endurance one and the beach sprint one, and both are very attractive, quite different. But if it has been decided for 2022 for the Youth Olympic Games in Dakar, it's not the case for 2024. Should coastal rowing be included in the 2024 program, we haven't decided yet which format will be presented.
Okay, and how will that decision be made as to which format?
So actually, based on I mean, it will come soon. I have to admit that I cannot tell you at this point as we speak the outcome. We are fighting and we are working very much with the IOC, but nothing is guaranteed. I'm afraid at this point in time. So the final decision belongs to the IOC Executive Board, and it will be this decision will be made in December this year. So normally, it was decided that the program of 2024 would be decided after Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. We were a little bit concerned because of the postponement of the games, but the decision-making process has been confirmed and will remain like it was. So we won't wait after Tokyo next year to have this decision from the IOC. So basically, the first step will be at the Extended Congress, at the FISA Extended Congress in 2020. The delegates will confirm or will vote for the official proposal to the IOC. And then the IOC will make a validation or not on this proposal that would have been made by the Congress, by the FISA Congress. As you can imagine, we cannot wait for the Congress to start with all this discussion. So it has been a long process, and we have presented this program with 3 events actually in coastal to the sport department for analysis and evaluation that will be that is currently undergoing, and with not only with the IOC sport department but also with the other stakeholders like OBS for the broadcasting, and they have a say in that discussion. How much does it cost to cover the event? Is it attractive? Is it? I mean, you can imagine all the criteria behind this evaluation, and also the organizing committee. So Paris 2024 is also a part of this discussion.
And you're part of that organizing committee for 2024. How are the preparations going?
I must say, so far so good. As you can imagine, having the games is a fantastic project. So we are very proud in France and in Paris to have the games for 2024, and everything is on plan. I must say that we have also to adapt to the situation, and this health crisis has made some difficulties in the process, but I must say that we will learn from that crisis and will adapt also for the games. So I'm confident that Paris can deliver fantastic games. It would be different, certainly, but we are still on track. Working and the organizing committee is working very well. The good news is that 80% of the facility are even more, 90% of the facilities are existing already. Wow. So only the Olympic Village is under construction, and the construction has started, and the aquatic center. So basically we are confident that everything will be ready on time. It will be hopefully a successful event. And as far as rowing is concerned, I don't know if you had the experience to race in maybe not, you were too young. You are too young. In Vers-sur-Marne, it's a course. I think last World Cup was in 1994, or 1997.
Okay.
Were you born at that? Yeah. No.
Yes, of course,
No,
I was born.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
I mean, no, I'm very young.
It's an existing rowing course that has been refurbished. The installation are new to accommodate even to accommodate athletes for training camp there. So, but the athletes will be accommodated in the Olympic Village. Actually, not all. It has been offered. Maybe you are not aware, but it has been offered to National Olympic committees to accommodate athletes during the competition nearby the course. And some have agreed to that to avoid transport during the games.
Perfect. Yes, it was a similar situation for London when we stayed at the sub-site.
Yeah, actually, it's not similar to London because London was a sub-village. It means an Olympic village where all the athletes all the rowers are at the same location. It was the university. But in that case, it will be just an offer to teams to be accommodated in hotel nearby, because Vers-sur-Marne is near Disneyland Paris, with a lot of resorts and hotels, and that's why it's also a way to reduce the capacity of the Olympic Village. So the athletes will be allowed to go back to the village after they have competed. And to experience the games, but as you know, as an athlete, when you are competing, you're focused on performance and on the race, on the competition, and it's better to rest and to be close to the field of play or to the rowing course.
Absolutely. And moving in a bit of a different direction now, and in context of some of, I guess, the recent events and discussions, I'd like to talk to you about what FISA is doing specifically with regard to inclusion, diversity, and making rowing more accessible. And you touched on that potentially the new disciplines help to open up rowing to different people. So I'd be really interested to hear from your point of view what FISA and World Rowing is doing in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we speak about the new disciplines that we call them coastal or indoor, it's a fantastic way to enlarge the community and to be more diverse and to reach audiences that we would not have reached with our specific historical way of practicing rowing. So that's part of the answer. I would just also say that if you look at, I appreciate it. It's about it's words, but if you look at our statutes at the very beginning in the principles, so at the top of what we believe as an organization, you can look at it and it's absolutely clear. It's all about diversity, respect, inclusion. And this is very much in our DNA in the sport of rowing. But we have a long history, and we cannot blame the past. But we have started with a development strategy probably in the 80s, and at the time we had less than 50 member federations. But thanks to this development strategy, we reach many more. Member federation, and now, if I'm correct, we have 156 member federations that are affiliated to FISA. So from in 30 years' time, you can see that actually rowing has really expanded, and it's part of the answer to your question. Now, looking forward, and we have launched actually, not looking forward first, diversity. It's also about increasing women in our sport. And it has been, I think, all the efforts and the project that have been launched in the last 10 years have made a fantastic result in terms of participation. If you look at the participation for the athletes, but also not only on the athlete side, it's also about having officials, having women in the leadership, and I'm very proud that FISA actually the best ranked international federation to have achieved a 50% or almost 50% of women in the board. In the council, we are 43% in the council and 50% in the executive committee. And this is actually the outcome of all this project. And we really believe that it's good for our sport. And looking forward now, we have now to also to reach diversity in the different dimension, not only in the gender aspect, but also in all the aspects. And this is how we can work for the future. I believe that sport is really being part of the society. Sport has a key. It's a key tool to address all these issues in societies, and we are part of that. So we can. I think that what we've been doing goes in that direction.
Absolutely, and we've seen, particularly, you mentioned indoor has been a great, tool to increase the diversity of the sport, and we've seen huge success with things like Invictus Games and with people with a disability, whether it's, physical or intellectual impairments as well. So it seems like there are a few disciplines coming in, and the sport is moving in a direction to be more inclusive across the board.
You're absolutely right to mention that we have para rowing, and I can tell you that we have been very proud to be part of the Paralympic Games, and this is really a dimension, a discipline that has grown in the past year, and we are very proud of that. And this is the way we are working to ensure that we can increase inclusion and diversity.
Absolutely. And now looking forward to the future, and obviously it was an interesting move by the IOC to award 2 Olympic venues at the same time, being 2024 to Paris, but 2028 to Los Angeles. And now there's a little bit of contention and a lot of discussion around the place about the Olympic course for the rowing in 2028. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening there, and will we potentially be racing over a shorter distance?
Actually, to be awarded with the games, you have to produce a bid document, and so you have to be ready to present to the IOC with what you will deliver for the Olympic Games, and to do so, Los Angeles 2028 has produced this bid document, and for rowing, the course is based in Lake Paris, which is a kind of 2.5-3 hours from Los Angeles. It's in the middle of the desert, a piece of water with nothing. And so they in that bid, obviously they have to fulfill all the requirements that we have. And when it comes to rowing, it's always a difficult one for many bid cities. Which doesn't have any existing rowing course. Rowing is not the I would say the most easy part of the bid. So and that's why I mentioned earlier on about all this pressure around complexity, around the organization, around the cost, and with this strong willingness from the IOC to reduce the cost, the complexity. So we are part of this exercise. And talking with Los Angeles 2028 for rowing, we had this in the bid document, and obviously it would require a sub village, so another village for the rowers, far away, disconnected from the core of the games. Extra cost, security, all these things. And then we have worked with the Los Angeles 2028 organizing committee on possible alternative. And indeed, we have been interested in investigating in actually the 1932 Olympic course based in Long Beach. Long Beach will be a kind of cluster of 5 sports, and it's 30 minutes from the UCLA, where they will be the Olympic Village, and so we are very interested in that particular course. So we investigated very much. The problem is that there is a bridge across the course, and a bridge that cannot be removed, and based on the context, we cannot say, oh yeah, you just have to rebuild another bridge. And we made a lot of investigation. I can tell you a lot. It was a huge exercise, and at the end, it was clear that the only possible solution would be to race on 1,500 meters. So now we have this kind of difficult decision to take based on this analysis and on the overall context. And again, I'm repeating, but the context is the pressure about complexity and being part of the games, not being the stone in the shoe. And so we have this debate about the future of our sport and to have a sustainable future in the Olympic program, to show that yes, rowing is not as conservative as you can believe, and rowing can adapt a little bit. So based on the analysis made by the Sports Medicine Commission around, because one thing is absolutely essential for us. We don't want to move too short. We want to keep the as we believe, and I do believe very much, as the key fundamental of the sport of rowing is how tough it is. So we cannot race on 2 or 3 minutes. So we have basically we have to go beyond the 5 minutes threshold or so. I appreciate for an 8 on 1,500 it might be slightly below, but the idea is to be as long as possible, and 1,500 is the limit that we can really consider. So at this point, I'm very transparent. I'm very frank with all of you. The decision is not made. We are evaluating this, all this aspect being in the Olympic movement, not being too complex, and I can hear some of the, not the enemies, but we have many allies in the Olympic movement, but we have also some who are fighting against rowing because it's too costly, there are too many, blah, blah, blah. So we have to understand all this pressure, and we want to make it clear that, yes, in rowing, we also have a kind of flexibility when it comes to that very difficult elements to take into account. So decision is not taken yet, but it might be the case that we will move to Long Beach, and in that case, also I would like to really make it clear, it doesn't mean that it will be that we will change to 1,500 for the sport of rowing. It will be limited to Los Angeles 2028 Olympic and Paralympic regattas. The World Championship will remain on 2,000. The qualification regattas will remain on 2,000 meters. Everything will remain, and we won't change our rules. We won't change the sport of rowing. It's just to show that rowing can adapt to a very specific situation that is the Olympic Games 2028.
Very complex, and thank you for taking us through that. I think that'll be very interesting for a lot of people to hear how we've come to this decision, and we look forward to hearing the outcome in due course.
Yeah, and actually we are very much we can hear we have the athletes also part of this discussion. 2 athletes, 3 views, okay, But I mean, with athletes, I can also understand that being part of the games, at the core of the games, in the middle of the games, it's also part of this equation. And obviously, there is no ideal solution. We have to take what the best solution for our sport and for the future of our sport. My main concern is about the athletes of today, but most importantly of the athletes of tomorrow. And I have some some illustration on that principle. But as leaders of the organization, we have also to look forward at not only at the next one, but also to the next 20 years. And it's very important that these decisions are very important for the future.
Absolutely, future-proofing our sport for many Olympics to come, hopefully.
Indeed.
Now, you are currently the holder of the 10K record on the rowing machine for the 40 to 49 category, I've been told. So are you planning to go for the 50 to 54 10K record anytime soon?
Wow, good question. My answer will be clear. It's a no. I'm how can I say that? I'm very competitive in my head, but it's just against myself. So and what I'm doing on the egg every day is just is not to make a performance, to show a performance. It's just because I want to keep in good shape. And well, I'm not sure I am in that way of thinking to make records on the paper. But actually, I'm doing it behind the scene, but not in front line.
Fair enough. Okay, we're now up to our Fast Five. It's our final 5 questions of the interview, and I ask these questions of all of my guests. So let's get started. What's your favourite rowing course to row on?
So if you consider as a competition, so for a rowing course for competition, because as you can imagine, we have been there are many places to row that are fantastic. If you consider a competition, I would say Lucerne is a great one, but I remember very well Lake Barrington in 1990, which was really awesome in terms of being in the middle of the nature, and it was great. Difficult to access, I appreciate that, but once you were on the water, it was fantastic. So I would say that this is my answer: Lucerne and Lake Barrington.
We actually have our national championships in Lake Barrington next year, so I think Australian rowing is looking to going back there. It's been some years now. And your top song or your top track to erg to, what do you like to listen to when you erg, or do you prefer to listen to nothing?
Well, actually, that's the point. Until very recently, I was on the erg without any music, but not long time ago, I started with the headphones, and I say, well, it's actually, as you know, rowing is so boring, and I say, oh, it's much better to have music. So I have moved to this kind of training with music, and I don't have a favorite song, but I do like the music of the 80s. Orchestral Man of in the Dark and all these things, and Italian songs as well. So this is not very I would say modern or current music, more in the past, but
whatever gets you through, that's the most important thing. The best piece of advice that you have been given?
Good question. I mean, I would say it's difficult to answer on one thing, but I would say lead by example, and for me, it's not an advice, but what makes my top priority of value is respect, And once you respect everyone, and obviously your teammates, your competitors, but also yourself, I think that's the most important thing. So it's not kind of advice, but it's what I would say as my key. What makes me very energetic is about respect. Yeah.
I think that's a really good piece of advice for everyone listening. That's something we can all take into what we're doing, I think. And your career highlight?
I think you can imagine. It's yeah. I would say the top of the top, and it's my very last international race. It was in Sydney on that day, and but if I can add another one to that, I would say it's not an international one, it's a national championships. The first time we won with my club the men's 8 at the national championship, and it was like we at the time we won against the favorite Paris, and on that boat I had my 2 brothers, so we were 3 of us of the same family in that 8, and it was in Egbollet.
Wow.
And we made, I think it was one of my best experience in terms of feeling in a race, because it was so great in a sense that I made a speech actually just before the start, and I created a kind of mental pressure on this guy, not to diminish to make them to have them I would say diminishing it was a positive pressure, I would say, and everyone made the best race of their life on that day, and that's also one of my best memory. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was talking to Neil Chagani and Matthew Pinsent last week on my episode, and we were talking about how sometimes it's not the biggest race or the most important race of your career. It's these races that are really special, for some other reason. And so your example speaks to that. I think that we all have those memories where it might not be, the pinnacle of our career, but something really special that we remember for the rest of our lives. So that sounds like a very special one for you and your family.
Absolutely.
And the hardest session that you have ever done?
Well, actually, and you know what I mean in rowing. I mean, every single session can be very tough and has to be very hard. I would say most of them are you have to push yourself, and this is how we behave in rowing, to push to every single training. But I would say, to answer your specific question, I remember the first time. The first weekend we had a training camp at the end of 1989 to start with the 1990 season. We had at the time a new head coach, actually Andy Holmes. He was in the. You talked about him with Martin last week. He was, or not last week, but you
2 weeks
were
ago,
mentioning
2
weeks ago, yeah. We had this weekend. On that weekend, on the Saturday afternoon, we had 5 or 6 times a 2,000 meters race pace, and it was about everyone in the pair. And I remember we finished at the time. It was dark. Only 3 boats made the final one. And at the 1,000 meter mark, it was so dark that they had to light the course with cars. And with my teammate, it was my first year with Michel Andrieux actually, and we were the only one to finish, because at the 1,000 meter marks, the last 2 just gave up, and we finished and it was really, really, really hard, because 6 times 2,000 meters in the same afternoon. It was basically the toughest of training I've ever had.
I'm not surprised you remember that one. That sounds awful.
Yeah. It was.
Well, JC, thank you so much for joining me. It's been great talking to you and hearing about not only your rowing career, but also what's happening at FISA and in World Rowing. And we look forward to some of those big decisions that are going to happen later in this year.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to share with you some of my career and the past, and also now in another, I would say, another dimension to look at the future of our sport. I just want to say that I'm fully committed and motivated in that very difficult environment because I mean the competition in the world of sport is quite tough. And for the sport of rowing, I can tell you that I put all my energy to ensure that we have the best future for the rowers. And as I just said earlier on, not only for the rowers of today, but as importantly, or most importantly, for the rowers of tomorrow.
Thank you. We're lucky to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.